Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. In this video, what I want to do is show you how to create yourself a boilerplate folder to make it easy for you to spin up new HTML, CSS, JavaScript projects, just pure HTML, CSS, JavaScript projects, really quickly, whenever you want. Okay, so what we're going to do is, basically the gist of this is we're going to create a folder, a boilerplate folder. So I'm going to create a folder called Boilerplate. Okay, and we're going to basically give all the basic pieces that you're going to need for every project in here, so that way whenever you want to start a new project, all you have to do is copy and paste or duplicate this folder and be ready to begin. Okay, so what you want to do is in this folder you're going to create 3 folders. Okay, new folder, one for CSS, so all your CSS files should go in that folder, then a folder called JS for JavaScript, then a folder IMG for images. Okay, and then we'll just create another folder called assets. This is just any other assets like fonts that you might be using, etc. Any markdown files, whatever kind of assets you may be using. Okay, and then we're also going to create our index.html in here. Okay, you always want to have your index.html be the starting spot for your website. Okay, cool. Now what I'm going to do is let's just put out the let's actually make our basic. So I'm going to right click the CSS folder, create a new file in there, call it style.css. Okay, where did that get created? I think that index.html ended up in the wrong folder. There we go. That's how I want it to look like, and this should be in the CSS folder. And now that I think about it, it looks like all the other folders got added in the wrong place. So let me move these folders, and then this folder needs to be there. And let's just make sure that this is, and then the assets folder needs to be moved as well. Okay, and that's what it should look like. Okay, cool. So in our CSS file, we got style.css, and in our JavaScript file, new file, app.js. That's always sort of the convention. All your custom JavaScript goes in app.js. Cool. So first things first, let's put some basic boilerplate here. HTML5. Again, I'm using VS Code, which has these nice snippet features. Okay, and in the HTML, I'm going to break this down in a way that's just kind of easy to work with from the get-go. So I'm going to just say header for all the header stuff. Okay, and then I'll put a nav tag in there. And even though I'm not using it right now, it's just set up for when I do use it later. Then all my main body stuff will go in main. Okay, and then my footer will go in footer. Okay, and again, all footer, main, header, nav, these are just divs. They have names just to kind of make them speak to you, in the sense that I know a header tag generally represents the content of my header, and the footer represents the content of my footer. Okay, so that's the deal there. I'm going to put in there, in my main tag, I'm just going to put an h1 hello world. Okay, just to kind of make sure that we know it's working. Okay, change the title. This is my site. Okay, and then we're going to link our tags. Okay, so we're going to link our CSS. See, and that's done, because that's why it's nice to call it style.css. The only problem is this needs to be in our folder, so we're going to do /CSS/style. So that way it goes into our CSS folder and then finds the style.css that's inside there. This is what's called a relative URL. Keep in mind, this is not a file path, this is a URL path. This is assuming that your website's run through a web server. So then this is attaching this to the end of the base URL, so the whatever.com/css/style, which would take it to the folder into the style.css. That's why I'm not putting like a dot in front of it. A dot is used for relative file paths. This is not a file path, it's a URL. Okay, then I have a script tag here, and I do source. Okay, I'm going to put app.js. Okay, and what a good habit to do is at the very end of your script tag, put a defer keyword here. What defer does, it just makes it that the script tag doesn't load until your page, until your HTML is done loading. Because especially if you have code that refers to your HTML, a lot of like jQuery, DOM manipulation, then that's going to prevent it from basically running the code before your website's loaded. So that's always a good keyword to add. Okay, so what this is going to do is just going to load up JavaScript from this file, which actually is going to be /js/app.js, because again, it's got to go inside our JS folder in app.js. Okay, cool. So now we've connected these two files. We need to confirm that they are connected. So first we'll connect the CSS. We're going to just do one style. Some styles that are good to always have, or at least in my opinion. And again, different people have their different habits. It's always good to have a root. Okay, a root selector. Now the root selector doesn't select anything. It's just a place to put variables. Okay, but variables are very useful because it allows you to make it easy to like change fonts, to change colors. So what I usually do is I'll create like 4 or 5 different variables. So the way the variables work is I'll do like this, like main color. We'll say main color is red. Okay, and then I'll do another variable, secondary color. Okay, you might think of some shorter names for them, but this is just to kind of be semantic. We'll say white. Okay, so it'll be white on red. And generally, you don't want too many colors. So you generally want like sort of a color that's sort of your dominant color, and then another color you use for like that kind of contrast for text and like little flourishes. Max like a third color that's an accent. That's really just sort of like for like little borders, just little accents. Not too many colors. It gets a little wacky looking if you do too many colors, unless you're really got a good eye. So let's just say this is my accent color, and we'll just call this green. Okay, although this is not, I don't think that would be a good color scheme, but it is what it is. And then I might also do fonts. So we'll say my title font. So this is going to be for my titles. Okay, and we'll just say that's Arial. Okay. And then we'll do text font. This will be just for all my normal text. And notice that all your variables always have to start with 2 dashes. That's just the way CSS works. Okay, 2 dashes. So in this case, we'll just do like serif. These are just defaults. Okay, you can go to Google Fonts and add your favorite fonts or whatever. But the cool thing is you can just add that all there. Okay. Then another good habit to do is just do this. I take the all element selector and I zero out everything's margin. I zero out everything's padding. Okay, and I do what's called box sizing. Now, normally when you're sizing elements in HTML, the border, the padding, and the margin all add to the width and height of the box. When you do box sizing border box, then what happens if you say, hey, this box is a 500 width, the border, the padding, and the margin is included in that 500 pixels. It doesn't add on to that 500 pixels. Okay, which makes it easier to kind of size things the way you expect them to be. So that's always just a good thing to kind of have set up on everything. So that way you just do the math in your head. You don't have to be adding all these extra pixels for your border, your margin, your padding. Okay, so this just kind of gives you a nice place to start with. It's kind of like a very light reset. You could download like a reset CSS file, which just kind of zeroes everything out. But this is kind of a very basic reset that does the main job. Okay, then I'll do a body style on the body tag. And here's where I'll use all my variables. Okay, or my font variables. So I'll do like font family. So my main text font is going to be, use the variable function var, and I'm going to use the variable text, and that's how you use the variables. Anywhere you want to use it, you just do var as like a function, and you put in the variable inside the parentheses. So I'm saying use this variable, and then it goes over here, finds the variable, and uses the this. So it's like me saying font family Arial. And then for my headings, where I use my titles, I would just set that up here: H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. So this way it applies it to all of them, and I don't have to keep doing one for each one. And then I'll just do font family var titles. And what's nice about this is that now if I want to change my fonts, all I have to do is change the fonts here. So I can just go to Google Fonts, find the fonts I like, add them there, and this is automatically all set to kind of apply them. And then I can use these colors throughout, when I'm doing all my styling, use these color variables. And then if I ever need to change colors of my whole project, I can just change the variable values, and it'll automatically change it on my entire project. Okay? So now, let's just see if this worked. If this worked, we should see that the Hello World is in a slightly different font, and we should see that the font changed. So I'm going to open this with Live Server, which is an extension in VS Code. So if you have installed the Live Server extension, it's not a bad idea to do so. Okay. Okie dokie. So once Live Server is installed, so you just go here to extensions and install it if you don't have it. Okay. But once it's installed, you can just right click on the index.html and say open with Live Server, and it'll just open it up in your browser. And there you go. Okay, so now I'm not sure if that's the right font. Did the styles change? So what you can do is you can open up the inspector. Let me just get that back into normal mode. There we go. And what I can do is I can highlight the H1 and see if the style was applied to it. So let's see your font weight, font play block main. Actually, it would be on body, wouldn't it? Body. Yeah, I'm not sure if the CSS styling. I can also go to sources and see here, and I don't see the other files connecting. Okay, so we know that did not finish connecting. So let's go back and take a look. Okay, JS app link relative style sheet / CSS. That should be right. CSS / style.css. But just in case, I'm going to put the dot in front of it. Let's see if the dot makes a difference. And that did make a difference. That time it did connect. And we can see the difference is that, see, now the file's connected in here. So if I look in sources, see, I can see that the files got downloaded as part of the project, and I can also see the font changed. Okay, so in this case, in this context, it is treating it as a relative file path. So I do need to put the dot. Okay, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I always run into situations where, for some reason, one works in one situation and another works in another situation. So just be wary. Sometimes you need the dot before, sometimes you don't. Okay, but we know our CSS is connected. And while we see that our JavaScript file is connected as well in sources, we should still test that. How do you test that? The simplest way to do it is you're just going to do the simple line. Just do a console.log quotations hello world. Okay, console.log hello world. And then we're going to refresh the site. We see the code in there, but let's see in our console. So here in our console, we should see hello world, and we do. So everything is connected. Nice. So we have our CSS with all our basic default styles. We have our index.html all boilerplated out, and we have our app.js all connected. Okay. Now, when you're kind of getting your first steps into web development, in the early days, what you should do is get practice using jQuery before you jump into like React, Vue, Angular. The reason is you kind of want to see how web development kind of evolved over the years. So you need to kind of learn how to build a basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript site. Then you're going to want to add in DOM manipulation, which you can do with just basic JavaScript, and you can do with the jQuery library. So in that case, we should probably add jQuery so we have access to it in this boilerplate, because eventually you're going to want to work with it. While you will only probably, like on the job, work with jQuery if you're working with much older websites, it's still something worth knowing because there's still a lot of old websites that use jQuery and a lot of other places where jQuery gets used. Okay? Even though probably if you're working on a newer application, you probably won't be seeing jQuery unless it's a dependency of some other thing you're using. Okay? But again, it's worth knowing. So I do have videos on how to use jQuery. I recommend watching those separately. Okay. So here's the jQuery website. And what you want to do is you want to find the code, which technically is actually here at code.jquery.com. And that'll take you to this page. This is a shortcut. And all we want to do is just take jQuery 3 point whatever, take the uncompressed one, copy this script tag, and we just want to copy this into our HTML before our app.js. So we paste that right there, and then just make sure you add a defer at the end of it, so that way you don't run into any issues with the page loading before your jQuery runs. Okay, so you make sure you put those defers, and you're good. And now, and then again, if you're not planning to use it for the particular project, you can always hit Control / and comment it out. But you have it there. The other thing that gets used a lot is Bootstrap. Okay, so we can go to Bootstrap, which is actually just getbootstrap.com. Okay, and we can get that also in our file, so that way it's all in one file. And then here's the CSS. So we would just copy the CSS here, this Bootstrap CSS. Okay, and I will add I want to add that after all my script tags. Actually, I'll just move all my link tags to after my script tags, because you want your link tag last, because you want your styles to have the highest priority. So there's the Bootstrap one. I'll leave it there. And then we want to use all the components. If we want to make all the components available for Bootstrap that Bootstrap has, we can copy the JavaScript for Bootstrap. So I'll put that right after jQuery, but before my app.js. And again, I want to make sure I add my defer keywords to each of these script tags. Always a good idea. Although technically, one of these is jQuery already, so you don't need 2 jQueries. So you can get rid of this first one, because that's already you already have jQuery loaded up in there, and just add defer to the other 2. Because see, this one's popper. Okay, so we want popper because that's not already in there, and then this is the Bootstrap JavaScript defer. Okay, and with that, and you hit save. Okay, and mine auto format. So you see how that auto formats? That's because I have an extension called Prettier. Okay, and that auto formats. If you're new to coding, I do not recommend downloading Prettier. You should get used to formatting the code yourself at first. Although after a while, when you've kind of gotten good at it and you're used to it, then get Prettier, and then you have to go change some settings in VS Code for it to like work. You have to just change it to like, look up like a setting called format on save. And it'll automatically format whenever you save. Okay, but see, now I have all those script tags. So what I'm going to do, if you want, if you don't, you can again comment out what you don't use when you don't need it, but it's there. So if I don't plan on using jQuery for this particular project, I just comment it out. If I don't plan on using Bootstrap, I can just comment out this whole thing. But I don't have to hunt around for it because it's already in my boilerplate. Okay, which is nice. And yeah, so now you have your boilerplate all set up. Okay, so you have your jQuery, you got your Bootstrap, you got your app.js, you got your CSS, you got your some nice low-hanging fruit for your CSS setup. Okay, all you have to do now is that when you want to create a new project, you just copy the folder, paste the folder. You'll get boilerplate copy, and you can just rename it Project 1. Okay, very nice. Okay, and then you can just start building out your project. So all your HTML's down, your body tags right here. You can do all your HTML down there. Again, you can turn on and off your jQuery and Bootstrap if you don't need it. Okay, you have your script tag, your CSS tag. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move those together, so that way they're on the same line. So that way, if you need to, if you don't plan on using any of the things, you can just select everything up here and comment it out, and still have your app.js and your style.css. That's probably the best way to do it. Always have your stuff at the very bottom below everything else. Makes it just easy to know where to look for stuff. Cool. So yeah, that's pretty easy now. So now you don't have to do all this setup every time you create a new project. You just copy and paste it, and then you can begin working on your next project. Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This showed you how to set up a basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript project. Showed you how to add those script and link tags. Showed you how to use that defer keyword in your script tags to make sure that your code doesn't load before your website loads. Showed you how to use CSS variables, so that way you can use variables in your CSS to make life easier, and how to test whether your CSS and JavaScript is connected correctly. Okay, so hopefully you watch this video and you are doing the same thing, so that way you can have applied the knowledge learned in this video. Have a wonderful day and enjoy.